It's been a couple of weeks since Assassin's Creed Mirage came out, and I finally got around to finishing the game. Ubisoft sent me a copy to review. By the way, thank you to Ubisoft for sending me a copy. So the question is, now that I've rolled credits, how good is it? Let's back up. If you don't know anything about Assassin's Creed Mirage, this is kind of like a half entry in the franchise. It originally started as DLC for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and then through development it grew and grew, and it got spun off into its own minigame that's similar in size to the older Assassin's Creed games, kind of like Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, checking how long to beat, it says the main story takes about 14.5 hours, but if you want to be more of a completionist, it'll take you about 26.5 hours. But considering the game is $50 instead of the normal $70 for typical AAA releases, you're looking at gamer math of about $2 an hour if you're doing everything the game has to offer, which is honestly a pretty solid value. As with any game, Mirage has some good and some bad, and we'll start off talking about the good, and I think it's great that it simplifies the overall Assassin's Creed experience. When we're talking about combat, it's way faster and feels more like a blend of the older games and the newer games, but it's pretty much entirely focused on dodging and parrying when you're in full-out open combat. But that's not necessarily the focus of the game or what they're encouraging you to do. More than any other game in the franchise since the original Assassin's Creed, Mirage pushes you to be more stealthy and actually play the game like an assassin. But it does pull one of the biggest features from the newer games, Eagle Vision, that came in Origins, that helps you scope out your plan of attack. You can identify secret passages into enemy territory, or you can talk to merchants and bribe your way in. No matter what you want to do, Eagle Vision kind of helps you plot your path. Or you can try to go in swords and guns blazing and then lose the heat once you get inside, but unlike past stealth-focused Assassin's Creeds, you actually can get overwhelmed if more than a handful of guards are coming after you at one time. And admittedly, this is probably a skill issue on my end, but either way, it's pushed me to be more intentional in sticking to the shadows versus just doing whatever I want to complete the objective like past games. Now let's talk about the skill tree, and coming from Valhalla's massive branching skill tree, Mirage feels incredibly pared back, and that can be a good thing. Skill points are unlocked at a really good pace, but none of the new skills that are unlocked are really game changers. After completing the first few real missions and getting connected with the first bureau, you've pretty much unlocked nearly all of the weapons and equipment and skills you'll be using in the game at a basic level. Some things get better over time with upgrades, but at its core, you've pretty much got everything. That's the skill tree, but let's talk about the inventory, because there's a little bit more depth in the inventory customization than compared to other previous older Assassin's Creed games. Different gear is found in chests throughout the game, with various perks that can help match your playstyle. For example, if you like using poison darts, a piece of armor increases the damage dealt to enemies who are poisoned. If you like going in quiet, one of the first pieces of gear that you unlock makes Basim's assassinations quieter, so it's harder to alert the guards. So those kind of examples are found throughout the entire inventory, and you can really shape your gear around the way that you want to play. And then there are weapon perks, like a dagger that cuts your health in half but ups the damage, so you've got a high risk, high reward option if you're willing to up the death potential a little bit, and let me tell you, I didn't need to up it any more than it already was. But beyond that, you've also got cosmetic customizations like outfits, including some throwbacks to past Assassin's Creed games, shout out to this Altair costume, along with talismans that are earned throughout the story. These don't really have any kind of impact on gameplay, but they do look cool. And so now let's talk about some of the downsides. The story and characters just aren't all that interesting, because no matter how much Ubisoft Bordeaux wants to get back to the roots of Assassin's Creed with Mirage, you just can't recapture that feeling of meeting Ezio Auditore for the first time in Assassin's Creed 2, and then seeing his rise to fame and the Brotherhood throughout the series. The gameplay makes it feel like an older Assassin's Creed, but the story that Mirage is telling just isn't really all that interesting. It does get the job done, it delivers you the gameplay in a way that keeps things moving at a pretty good pace, but things don't get really good until roughly the last hour or two of the game, which can definitely be a problem. But it was also a nice payoff as a fan of Assassin's Creed Valhalla that wanted more of Basim's backstory to learn how he kind of came into those series of events in the last game. While I personally wasn't a huge fan of the story, I do like the investigations menu that takes a page from previous games. It's a nice visual map that helps you kind of navigate the story and understand exactly what's happening and how this whole spider web of events is connected, and it's much better than something like Starfield's quest menu that's just a straight up menu like something from Windows 98. Now let's talk graphics, because Assassin's Creed Mirage is incredibly hard to nail down when it comes to looks. There are some moments in the game that look absolutely stunning, especially those iconic flyovers of the cityscape when you're synchronizing a viewpoint. But then you'll hit a cutscene with some texture pop-ins and last-gen facial animations. It's nothing that's really catastrophic for the overall experience, but it's abundantly clear that this is a budget cross-gen title built on the back of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And then we get to the big controversy, Assassin Focus. This is a new gameplay feature that's pretty much a glitch in the animus, and as you get stealth kills in the game, chunks on this focus meter build up, and you can add more chunks by unlocking some of the skills in the skill tree. But once you've built up some of the focus, activating Assassin Focus lets you select enemies and kill them without triggering any alarms, and you just kind of glitch your way around. Seems kind of strange for a game that's trying to get back to the roots of Assassin's Creed. Now, I know that I've gotten a ton of comments of people complaining about this, but personally, I don't mind it at all. In fact, it's a great way to knock out a tricky area and move the game forward, and the benefit is that it's not really being pushed on anyone. There are areas of the game that are much easier with Assassin Focus, but beyond the sections of the game where the mechanic is really being introduced, I can't say that it's pushed me to use it at any other point. I do choose to use it, but I don't really feel like I'm forced to at any point in the game. So for the players that are complaining about Assassin Focus, it's easy to avoid and it's not really that big of a deal in general, and not to mention this is Mirage's big new thing. If there wasn't anything new that the game brought to the table, people would complain that it's an empty filler game with a lack of innovation. I think it's cool to see Ubisoft trying new things to switch up the old school gameplay without relying on the RPG elements introduced in the last 3 big mainline games. So overall, what's the verdict on Assassin's Creed Mirage? It really comes down to what kind of Assassin's Creed game you like to play. If you're a fan of the more recent massive RPGs, Mirage is probably going to feel too simplified. There just isn't as much game here, and that's because there isn't meant to be. But if you're a player who's missing those old school Assassin's Creed games, Mirage does a good job of modernizing the gameplay and taking lessons from the newer games just enough to make it feel fresh without getting away from the simple combat and stealth focus that made the games popular to begin with. The story isn't breaking any new ground, but does it even really need to? With the franchise spinning off into different games over the next 5 years across Mirage, codename Hexy, and codename Red, building out the character of Basim might not have ended up being as big of a priority for the team as it might have been when this was going to be a Valhalla DLC. I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, but if the story is used to deliver the gameplay, then it gets the job done. Overall, I'd give Assassin's Creed Mirage a 7.5 out of 10. It's absolutely a game that I'll keep coming back to chip away at and complete contracts and side quests, even if it's not going to be taking the crown from Assassin's Creed 2 as the best one in the franchise anytime soon. If you've played the game, I would love to know what you think. What did Mirage do well? What could they improve on? And beyond that, do you think that they should continue bringing back the old school Assassin's Creed games, or should they lean entirely into the RPG system they've had over the past 5 years or so? But as always, thanks for taking time to watch. If you're new here and you enjoy the channel, hit that subscribe button down below, drop a like on the video, and I will catch you on the next one. Until then, keep on playing.